Well, good evening, church history friends. My name is Barb Walden, and I am thrilled that you are joining us tonight as we celebrate the 193rd anniversary of the founding of Community of Christ. What a journey it has been. Tonight, we're also welcoming Andrew Bolton, and we'll have a discussion on the church seal. I don't know about you, but I'm wearing my church seal. This was a gift from a wonderful woman out in the Ridgecrest, California congregation who gave it to me as a child, and I've loved it ever since. And so I'd love to hear from some of you out there if you have a church seal necklace, or some had rings, others have the church seal on a t-shirt or a variety of places. And I'd love to hear what church seals you have. Now, as you're all aware, today is Maundy Thursday, and our friends from the Pacific Southwest International Mission Center have extended an invitation to everyone here tonight to join them in a virtual Maundy Thursday service following tonight's program. The online service will last around 30 to 40 minutes in length, and it'll include the sacrament of communion. The service begins at 7 p.m. Pacific Coast Time or 9 p.m. Central Time. Peter will drop the Zoom link in the chats, and we will also include the Zoom link in the closing slides tonight. So we thank Denise Leichter and the Pacific Southwest International Mission Center president for extending this invitation and for the warm hospitality of her mission center. We sure do appreciate it. Our April 6th program is not only a great way to learn church history and art, it's also an opportunity to support preserving the past. Donations received this evening will support the ongoing maintenance and preservation needs of all 5 Community of Christ historic sites. Donations will also help fund summer internships and educational programs. Friends, we couldn't host educational programs like tonight without your generous support. So we thank you so much for helping preserve the past and inspire the future. And speaking of educational programs, we have an exciting spring schedule filled with more church history content. So get out your calendars, friends, because we have a great spring lineup. And I'm going to go over it quickly before handing the evening over to our friend Andrew. So we received such positive feedback about last fall's series on the Scattered Saints that we're bringing it back this spring with 4 additional speakers to help us explore and understand the various Latter-day Saint groups that formed after 1844. And here's what we can look forward to during the spring series, which will run from May 11th through June 1st. Starting off our series is Vicki Cleverly Speak, and she's going to speak about polygamy, perceptions, and power, how the Strangites became RLDS. The next week, Amy De Rogatis will share the evening with us in exploring the life and legacy of Elvira Eliza Field. And her presentation is called Charlie's a Gal, James Jesse Strang's first plural wife, Elvira Eliza Field. Then in the 3rd week of the series, we'll welcome Eric Paul Rogers, and he'll speak on From Morrisite to Josephite and Beyond. That'll be a fabulous lecture. We heard last spring from Eric Paul Rogers, who introduced us to Mark Forscutt and the fascinating life story of Mark Forscutt. Well, Mark Forscutt was a former member of the Morrisite group, and Eric Paul Rogers will come back this spring to tell us all about the Morrisite community. The spring series will wrap up with our friend Mel Johnson, and Melvin is going to talk about Lyman White. His lecture is called Lyman White and the Mormon Trails in Texas, the wild ram and his flock in the Texas Hill Country before 1860. It's going to be an awesome spring, so be sure to keep an eye on your inbox for additional information about the spring lecture series and schedule. Online registration is now open and live on our website, so be sure to head over to the website to save your online seat for this exciting series. And Peter will drop a link to that in the chats. So enough about the future. Let's focus on tonight's program. Joining me this evening is Peter Smith from sunny Florida. Peter's co-hosting and helping manage things from behind the scenes. Welcome, Peter, and thank you so much. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Andrew Bolton, our guest speaker this evening. Andrew is the author of a number of papers on Latter-day Saint history, published in the Journal of Mormon History, Dialogue, John Whitmer Historical Association Journal, and Restoration Studies. He has coordinated the work at Community of Christ in Asia and served as an apostle for 9 years, from 2007 through 2016, which included overseeing congregations in 10 countries. The title of Andrew's lecture tonight is The History of the Church Seal, War, Peace, and Visual Theology. So thank you, Andrew, for taking time this evening to share with us. I'll turn the floor over to you, as we are all more than ready to hear the story and witness the diverse art behind the Community of Christ Church Seal.
Thank you, Barb, and thank you everyone for being online. We look forward to a good time together. So, the history of the Church Seal, War, Peace, and Visual Theology. I want to also talk about the power of the Church Seal for our mission of peace on this 6th of April, 2023. Here are the official Church seals through the years, from 1874 to 2001, and the current seal. Its visual theology is the most common artwork in our holy places, whether it be the temple doors or in my little congregation in England, in Leicester, a plaque on the wall. The church seal is important for us. It's stained glass windows, as like in Denton, England, near Manchester, or Enfield, London, or Grand Valley in Ontario, Canada. Or in this case, on the outside of a building, a church building, in the Westerijn congregation in Friesland in the Netherlands. And Breda here is Dutch for peace. It's translated into Spanish. Here, thanks to my daughter-in-law, we have it in Tahitian and French. A quick trip to the Philippines. This is Jennifer de Guzman, a dynamic mission center president. And these are the doors to the Simambaan congregation. One of the things we decided was that all our congregations would have these peace doors. And for 2 years, Jewel and I, with baby Matthew, when we were serving in Tokyo, Japan, would look at this church seal in our sanctuary in Tokyo. And if you look at this character here, it means harmony. You see, it's balanced. And this character here has a square here, which means mouth, and it means equal mouth. So this is justice, enough food for everybody. This is harmony. So in Chinese, the characters are reversed. This is also in the same building in Tokyo, and with a Japanese child. If we go to Seoul, Korea, you can see this version of the church seal. The Australian delegation to IYF in 2014 had this church seal on their T-shirt. A bit outrageous, don't you think, to have a kangaroo, a wallaby, and a koala there. But the Des Moines State IYF team have this. I think this is perhaps the very best. And then I want to say a little bit about our very good friend Beck Tilbury, a wonderful member of the Leicester, England congregation, who's a cancer survivor. She said this: "The Holy Spirit is a blanket of comfort and a shield of protection." And you'll see on her shield, she drew this, is the church seal. And let's go to Utah to hear Brittany Mengelson's story. She comes from an LDS family. This is her grandparents' tombstone, and they're LDS, we're LDS. And on the back of that tombstone is the honoring of her grandfather. And if you look very carefully, you'll see the church seal. Now, what's the story behind how a church seal crept onto the tombstone of an LDS sergeant in the US Army in World War II is a story worth finding out. And then if we go to Nigeria, the global south, we have a choir dressed in an outfit which has the church seal all over it. And we're going to hear their music. They're going to be singing Spirit of God like a fire is burning. If we go to India, we celebrated 50 years of the church's presence in India in 2015. It's Golden Jubilee. You see the church seal and this artwork over the subcontinent of India. This is the male part of the gathering that day, very sober, reverent-looking, devoted males. The women, however, are a little bit wild. I think somebody got them to cheer. And there's 15,000 gathered here. This is the biggest gathering in the history of the Community of Christ. I was at Stone Church, and this biker had this wonderful church seal and message and was kind enough to let me photograph it. And still in Stone Church, we have this wonderful stained glass window. So the church seal. Beloved, when the presidency let the church know that they were considering a redesign around 2000, they were inundated with 13,000 letters, phone calls, and emails. It was the biggest post bag the first presidency has ever had. Don't mess with the church seal was, I think, the message. The first time I met the church seal was in Germany. I was a young adult. I was born Roman Catholic, grew up Roman Catholic, and met somebody on a boat who was a member of Community of Christ, John Menzies. And he introduced me to the Springer congregation near Hanover. The church seal, with freedom, the German word for peace, was on the pulpit. It was healing for me to meet a people who were more loving than my own family. It was healing because my dad had been a British soldier for 7 terrible years in World War II. And it was healing that these young people were really interested in peace. The song that the New Seekers were singing was something that you heard in their homes. So I've told you my story about the church seal. When you see the church seal, what do you feel? Can you put that in the chats? And Peter and Barb, or Peter, will just let us have a sample of your own feelings about the church seal.
Nancy Hadsel shares, I feel like I found my church home. Family from Tanya Cooper. Joan Guthrie says hope. Catherine Grabow says pride. Oh, it jumped. Tom Weber says a universal peace. Cheryl says, when I see the seal, I know that all are welcome everywhere. Rock says friends. Dennis Wise says dream of the kingdom. Don Woster says unity. From Teresa Ress, family. The seal means family. Steve Thompson says it's prophetic to me. It is a uniting factor for me with the church around the world. And Janice Foley says, I feel, oh, it moved on me again. I feel peace. Janet Irby says aspiration.
So thank you for that sample. So let's now look at the story of the church seal. I want to take you to 106 years ago, to April the 6th, 1917. April the 6th, 1917 was a Good Friday. What happened this day? It was the day that Congress authorized American entry into World War I. The war had already been going about 3 years, but the entry of the United States into the war was decisive. But let's look a little bit about World War I. We've just passed the centennial of that terrible war. It started by accident. The driver took the wrong turning and turned down the street. Gavrilo Princip, a 19-year-old Serb nationalist, were in Sarajevo in Bosnia, had a gun and had been looking for an opportunity to kill or assassinate Archduke Ferdinand. And he did this and the spouse of the Archduke. It launched a month later a terrible First World War. What do historians make of this war? John Keegan, a British military historian, right of center, said, these are his words, his opening words of his book on World War I. The First World War was a tragic and unnecessary conflict. And in fact, this summarizes the consensus of historians left and right about World War I. It was tragic and unnecessary. It was started by 15 to 45 men. It was billed as the war to end all wars, said H.G. Wells, the British novelist. And President Woodrow Wilson used this as a slogan to ginger American support. Matt Naylor, a church member from Australia, who's amazingly the president and CEO of the American National World War I Museum in all places, Kansas City, had a grandfather who was a British soldier in that conflict. He has his kit on his desk. He says it was the founding catastrophe of the 20th century. World War I led to the Second World War, to the Holocaust, to the Cold War, to 9/11. The swirling, unintended consequences of violence continued reverberating through the 20th century into the 21st century. So I want to explore the church seal as a response to violence. And I want to understand Joseph III's response to violence. You know the story of the assassination of his dad and uncle Hiram, Carthage jail, the 27th of June, 1844. You may not know the story that when the body was brought to the mansion house in Nauvoo, Emma collapsed 3 times before she was able to get to the coffin to see her dead husband. How did that mark Joseph Smith III, only 12 years old at the time? I think it marked him deeply. When the saints left Nauvoo for the great trek west to the Salt Lake Basin, he was given 3 gifts. Brigham Young gave him a pistol. A friend gave him a large Bowie knife. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And Neil K. Whitney, a bishop in the church, gave him a desk. And you can see this desk in the red brick store in Nauvoo. It was this desk, this gift, that Joseph Smith used most of all. He was affected by the American Civil War, and as a 30-year-old, he gave a pro-North speech and persuaded, I think, 18 young men to enlist. This wasn't popular amongst fiancés, wives, mothers, and he was severely criticized by church people as well. Charles Derry was one of his critics, otherwise a great fan of his. And this was the only war speech Joseph III was to make. He embarked on a peace direction. He said, peace is eminently our mission. He forgave Thomas Sharp, who was the editor of a newspaper that didn't do us any favors. And Thomas Sharp, for sure, was involved in the assassination plot of his dad and uncle. In 1913, and it forms a section in the Doctrine and Covenants, he described the Council of 12 as apostles of peace, life and salvation. And his last writing, just before he died, was an editorial in the Saints Herald supporting US neutrality in World War I. So Joseph Smith III, after a faltering start took us in a strong peace direction. And part of that peace direction was the innovation of the church seal. This has been the church seal since 1874, its basic design. The decision was made in Plano, Illinois, as they gathered in conference in 1874. Jason Briggs, president of the Council of 12, Elijah Banter, a member of the presiding bishopric, and Joseph III, a member of the First Presidency, met as a committee to decide the church seal that morning on April the 8th. This is a part of the minute that they respectfully submitted to the conference that afternoon. The conference supported this design and move to have the church seal. What's behind the church seal? Why a church seal? Rick Collins, a church member from Australia, suggests that it was all to do with the Mountain Meadows massacre, where Mormon friends attacked an innocent wagon train on its way to California, where I am at the moment, by the way, and killed 120 people. Justice was not done. Immediately, Brigham Young delayed things. The Civil War delayed things, but by 1874, it was headline news that 9 men were indicted for this crime. It was a big story. And the church seal was to say the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is not the same. It has a peace mission. So I find that very interesting. If we look closely at the church seal, we have the palm tree. The church had been reestablished in French Polynesia. And we had the 3 continents, Europe, North America, and Australia. Where's the inspiration for the church seal? We're going to look at this passage from Isaiah. Peter.
A shoot shall come out from the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord.
So this is describing the coming of the Messiah. What's the result when the Messiah comes?
The wolf shall live with the lamb. The leopard shall lie down with the kid, the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put its hand on the adder's den.
So you have predator and prey living together in peace and a world safe for children. The passage ends with this verse: they will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. This gives us a direction for our missionary work. The church seal takes us to the nonviolence of the peaceful one. But how did it enter our tradition? I suggest that the Spirit of God like a fire is burning. That hymn by W.W. Phelps is the reason. Verse 6 in Emma's Kirtland hymnal has this verse with the first line ending with lion. It should have been wolf, but it's used lion because the third line ends with Zion, and lion and Zion rhyme. And the saints knew this hymn. It was kind of the anthem of the whole movement. And the RLDS certainly would have sung this, including this verse. We dropped this verse, which is a pity, but Randall Pratt and I reworked it, and it's now in verse 3 in our new hymnal. But there's more from first Isaiah about visions of peace. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore, from Isaiah 2. This statue is outside the United Nations building in New York. I saw it as a 19-year-old. It was inspiring. And then in Isaiah 9, we have these words: unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and he will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. I can hear the Messiah choir sing this wonderful scripture. But Prince of Peace, now I have a confession. No member of the royal family in Britain has been a Prince of Peace. They've always been monarchs of war. So to call the coming Messiah the Prince of Peace was to indicate God had something radically different in mind. So let's look at the church seal now in our history. For the first few years, it was just used for legal documents. There are 3 stamps, one in England, one in Britain, one in Canada, and one in the United States for legal work. F.M. Smith in 1915 became prophet president of the church. And one of his first actions was to commission Henry Smith, an architect, to do a new church seal that culminated in this 1919 version. Of course, this is in the midst of World War I. And he, in 1920, echoed the words of his father: let the apostles move out, taking to the peoples of the world the message of peace. We have here the idea of the message of apostles taking a message of peace to the world. So from the 1920s, the use of the church seal became much more public. The church seal begins to be used on the letterhead and church publications. If you look at the auditorium next time you're visiting, you'll see it on the outside of the building and also on the inside. The church seal becomes the artwork of the church, the logo of the church. And I don't think we would have a temple dedicated to the pursuit of peace, reconciliation, and healing of the spirit, inspired by the witness and redeemer of the world, were it not for the church seal as visual theology, beloved in our sanctuaries and on our publications. Next year is the 150th anniversary of the Peace Seal. And my challenge and invitation to you is, what can you, your congregation and mission center, do to live it out, to highlight it, particularly with our young people, your grandchildren, great-grandchildren, in our places of worship, in our camps, and at our reunions. This is a glorious opportunity to celebrate the sesquicentennial of the church seal. Today is April the 6th. Today is not Good Friday, it's Maundy Thursday. And the invitation to join the Pacific Southwest International Mission Center will be repeated in a few moments. Let's begin the story of Maundy Thursday. It starts on the Sunday, Palm Sunday. Jesus enters Jerusalem on a donkey, not in a chariot or on a cavalry horse. It's like he enters Jerusalem on a bicycle, not in a tank. He goes to the temple and turns over the tables of the money changers and drives out the sacrificial animals. Why? Why does he call it a den of robbers? It's because the authorities in the temple are charging outrageous prices for the sacrificial animals, exploiting the pious poor. That's why it's a den of robbers. Of course, the authorities are really upset that Jesus has interrupted business in this action or protest of his, and they want to kill him. But Mark and Luke both say that the crowd protect Jesus. We go then to what we call today Maundy Thursday. Many symbolic actions take place at this Passover meal. But let's focus for a moment on the meaning of a Passover meal. It remembers Exodus, freedom from slavery. The Passover meal in Judaism is as big and as joyful as Independence Day and July the 4th is in the United States. But there's also tensions in this Passover meal. Jesus lets Peter and John know that someone's going to betray him, and indicates that it's Judas. Jesus, after the meal, goes to pray in the Garden of Gethsemane. The three disciples that accompany him fall asleep. Judas comes with an armed guard and says, "The one I kissed, that's him. Hold him fast." Here we see Judas in that act of kissing. And Peter, shoulder bare, hand on shoulder, is going to defend his master. And he tries to cleave the skull of the servant of the high priest. But it's a glancing blow and cuts off the ear, which I'm told is very painful. What does Jesus do in this situation? Surely divine violence is justified as this illegal act of seizing the Lord's Messiah is taking place. But no, he says to Peter, "Put your sword back into its place. Don't you know that I could call on 12 legions of angels?" What's 12 legions? Well, I think it's 36 to 72,000 paratroopers. A legion was 3,000 to 6,000 men. But Jesus is speaking in hyperbole, exaggeration. He's not going down that road at all, because the next thing he says, "He who lives by the sword dies by the sword." And he says that if you let my disciples go, I'll come peacefully. Tertullian, an early church father living in North Africa, says this: when Jesus disarmed Peter, Jesus disarmed every disciple after Peter. Perhaps we need to focus on the Sermon on the Mount. That will be the logical last step of a church seal people.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on the church seal with us this evening. This is absolutely fascinating. And to see the different versions of the church seal from all over the world was a real treat. Thank you for your collection and for sharing that collection with us. We have also received a note from an anonymous donor this evening, and they have offered to match the first $250 in donations received tonight. What a wonderful, wonderful surprise. So Peter will drop the donation information in the chat once more, in case there's anyone out there who'd like to support the historic sites tonight on the 193rd anniversary of the church. It's a double your donation tonight, totally unexpected and absolutely greatly appreciated. Andrew, do you have any closing words you'd like to share with the group before we end our evening together?
So let's see what we can do next year to celebrate the sesquicentennial of the church seal, and how we can do peace projects and involve our young people in the significance and meaning of the church seal. And then I think the fact that we get the church seal perhaps from the anthem of the church and Spirit of God like a fire is burning. Perhaps that's a good segue for Barb in a moment.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for the homework assignment that you've given us over the next year. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge of the church seal and all of the diverse art behind our symbol of peace this evening. We really appreciate the time and research that you've shared. And also great thanks to Peter Smith for handling everything behind the scenes for us tonight and making it look so easy, as he always does. Our thanks to Denise Leichter and the Pacific Southwest International Mission Center for their invitation to join their Maundy Thursday service tonight. Peter will drop the Zoom link in the chat for those of you interested in joining our friends from the Pacific Southwest. And also thank you to our anonymous donor for offering to match the first $250 in donations received tonight. Thank you for your generosity. And lastly, thank you to everyone here for sharing your evening with us and helping celebrate the 193rd anniversary of the founding of Community of Christ and the 149th year of the church seal. What an incredible journey it has been. So for those of you planning to attend the Community of Christ World Conference later this month, We hope you'll swing by our Mission Expo table inside the temple near the Church History Museum. Be sure to take a selfie with a number of historic people, and that'll be on display there at the Community of Christ Historic Sites Foundation booth. We'll have Marietta Walker and Joseph III and others who would love to have a picture with you. Or you can pick up some swag while you're there. We will have shirts and buttons, pens, and all sorts of material exploring ways you can help preserve and share church heritage. We also look forward to welcoming you back this May as we continue to explore the stories of the scattered saints in our spring lecture series. Be sure to register to save your online seat. And as Andrew mentioned earlier today, we will close out this evening with a video featuring the choir from the Abak congregation, which is located next to the Oku Mafang in Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. The video features the choir singing "The Spirit of God Like a Fire is Burning" in Efik. In addition to the beautiful music from the choir, you'll also notice the choir members' clothing. The material features the familiar Community of Christ Church seal and images of the temple and independence. Our thanks and gratitude to Bunda Chibwe for sharing this video with us. Thank you, Bunda. So everyone, until next time, take care, keep reading your church history, and have a blessed night.